Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Michelle Saeed, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we're thrilled to have Miguel Roblero, the founder and CEO of Conexion Creative, joining us. Miguel brings over 17 years of UX design experience, having worked with different giants like Dell and IBM, and now leads Conexion Creative to deliver intuitive digital experiences. We'll explore his founding story, how Conexion Creative is reshaping UX design, and his vision for scaling this innovative business. So let's dive in. Miguel, welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. So let's kick things off for the listeners. Take us back to the beginning. What specific problem was it within the UX or digital product landscape, perhaps around poor user engagement or inaccessibility, that inspired you to start Conexion Creative?
So I left the tech space of UX for many reasons, and I wanted to start a business I thought would help small businesses and entrepreneurs. Because being in the tech space, we have a bias that everybody knows tech, and they really don't. So how do you help small businesses in the landscape of digital marketing, where everybody says they're an expert, but really they just saw a YouTube video and now sold paid ads, right? So I found a way to take a user lens from UX and apply it over the business side of things and try to get the best value for customers.
Mm.
I want to help them scale, grow, and tell stories, right? So hopefully I answered your question.
Absolutely. So love it. I want to learn about really like how Conexion Creative's offer has evolved. How what you provide, like UX design or user research, and who you serve, such as some of the fintech clients, how has that changed since you first started?
So we didn't know where to start initially, and it was me initially, and now I have a business partner, but I didn't know where to start because everybody does digital marketing. So I had to be thoughtful in how I approach that. I'm fortunate where I went to business school and I learned what I didn't know before. I had a small web agency from '05 to 2016, and all I knew how to do was pick up the phone to make calls and do websites, but it was an unsustainable business model. I didn't know that. That went under in 2016. So this time around, I wanted to make sure that I had a business that had a long-term value for a customer, right? That it wasn't a one-off and that we provided actual value. So as I began this process, I looked at different business models, what we could do, a UX boot camp. I did that, I taught one, and I did that internally at a big enterprise. I looked at maybe a consultancy with some friends. So we couldn't break free of being designers. And part of being an entrepreneur is knowing when to break free of that and not be so hell-bent on, I know how to do this. How can I do something else that provides value? Because it's customer centered. So I
Right.
looked at the digital marketing side of things and I thought, here's a space where we can actually help
Mm.
and I could provide some insight. So very quickly, I became an expert on all digital marketing things. And I got an attorney to be a client and we started running experiments in essence, right? We did paid
Mm.
ads. Those worked for a while until they didn't. We did SEO. That worked for a while until it didn't. So
Mm.
we were pivoting throughout this process and we landed on what's called local SEO, the Google three-pack,
Mm.
that not many companies tend to showcase because, to be quite frank, you make more money on the other verticals. You make more
Mm.
money selling SEO, you make more money doing paid ads. Local
Mm.
SEO is a set price, but it helps businesses get calls. So we niche down through experiments on the Google three-pack. And what that is, when you search for something on the internet, whether it's desktop or mobile, you
Mm.
get all the paid ads, you get the map from Google, which
Mm.
is the nearby, and then you get those three businesses underneath that map.
Mm.
That's called the three-pack. If you can get a business in that rotation, it's a rotation. Off
Mm.
more often than not, they get about 10 times the call because that's a trusted source from Google as
Mm.
opposed to the paid ads. So that's where we started to niche down. But we also realized shortly after doing that, you have to have a comprehensive branding package, meaning you have to have a website with blogs. You have to have a story you're telling across all verticals, not just the three-pack. Because there are some things on that three-pack you have to do. Post,
Mm.
geotagging, adding
Mm.
Google Maps, Q&As, the whole nine yards to get Google to rank your business higher as
Mm.
authentic. So hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So would love for you to walk us through like the nuts and bolts of like really how Conexion Creative generates revenue today. Tell us a little bit about the core offerings. Let's say if someone does come through the process, they do want to work with you. How do you structure what you do for your clients? What does that actual customer journey look like and some of those deliverables?
Yeah, so we in essence meet with clients one or two to three times, depending on how we meet them, right? Right now, it's a lot of networking, a lot of talking to people, sending out emails. We did do the cold call journey, but That's a sunken ship unless you have cell phones. Because if you do a business, it's going to take forever to get in front of a decision maker. So email and networking in person referrals has been our best bet. And as
Mm,
far as customer journey, by the time a customer signs with us, they look at us as a expert in what we do.
mm,
Because I know what I'm doing, and so is my business partner, we're able to answer questions where other people are not. Because they have specific questions. Because most customers have tried SEO, have tried
mm,
paid ad, and it just hasn't worked. So the
mm,
question is why us and why now and why should we do this? So it
mm,
becomes one of the risk mitigation factors for those owners to invest. So
mm,
what we tell them is, look, not only do we do the three pack, but you really have to look at brand and storytelling.
mm,
I borrowed this from Pixar because it's a great video on how to tell stories, but I use it in corporate America for storytelling internally on presentations. That got really great traction. It got adopted by Coca-Cola for their nationwide playbook. I did it when I was the boot camp instructor for all my students and then
mm,
applied this framework to their portfolios, and they got jobs all over the ecosystem of tech. And what that is, that made me care.
mm,
Because everybody could do digital marketing. Why us? Make me care. Because
mm,
if I can't care about you and your service or product, why would I use you? When
mm,
everybody does everything, right? So I'm big on business owners thinking about them making me care in their story. Why
mm,
should someone go to you as a personal injury attorney? Why should someone go to you as an HVAC contractor? Why
mm,
should someone go to you as a mortgage broker? Why are you different? It's that make me care part of the storytelling that I believe in holistically and wholeheartedly, and that helps businesses and ours to showcase in front of people and start building that trust. Did I answer
mm.
your question?
Yeah, for sure. Now, in terms of like really all the customizations and the tailorings from really a lot of what you're doing with a lot of companies on text development and like branding and messaging, many guests who we've had on here, they found it almost like tough to scale without sacrificing the quality and being in all the rooms at once. I'm curious, how have you thought about really scaling and productizing your offer while still keeping it effective and manageable? How are you navigating that as you guys grow and look to get to the next level in 2025?
So one of the things that we're very fortunate is I was able to find a company to partner with that's an
Mm,
Austin-based company, oddly enough, that we get to do a lot of work with. So I know they could produce the results I want. So I
mm,
trust them with the handoff for the actual production work. As far as the storytelling work, we have to be involved in that. It's hard to get somebody to do that unless they know the space. I
mm,
do leverage some of the students that I have put into the tech space because I taught them those frameworks and they believe in them and they use them. So they become advocates of that as well. Not because Miguel said so, but because it worked for them. So when we have to outsource any of that kind of stuff, that's who I leverage is my network of designers who are
mm,
able to do that work. Because again, I talked to them, they used it, it worked in their careers or worked in the corporate America field. So they wound up being big believers and they made me care. And they're very good at articulating that. Does that make sense for the scaling part of that? Because I can't be everywhere, right?
yeah.
It's kind of how that goes.
From what it sounds like, you're pretty much outsourcing a lot of that work anyways, and a lot of the fulfillment pieces, rather than just, of course, doing it yourself is not going to be possible. It's just not going to be the sustainable way to do it. Now, building on your growth, how are you currently acquiring some of your clients right now? I know you talked a little bit about networking, cold calling, emails, referrals being your best bet. Have you looked into paid ads as well? Because I know that's probably some part of the strategy that you guys are offering externally to clients. But like in your experience, what has been the best way for acquiring some of the clients right now?
So it depends on the client and what they're paying for in the competitive space. Like attorneys in general, personal injury attorneys here in Texas, right? They're going to spend about 500 to 700 bucks a click or a call. So their spend has to be enormous. Same thing with digital marketing companies. So when you're starting, how do you do that when you're bootstrapping? Because we're all in right now with our own investment, right? We haven't hit, we're still in the red financially, but we're funding our own life. We reduced our lifestyles and we're funding ourselves, right? So how do we get clients with paid ads? And it depends on the vertical, right? And it depends on which vertical of paid ads you're using, meaning are you using the Google PPC pay per click? Are you using the Google local service ads? Are you using Facebook ads? Are you using Instagram ads? What do you expect to come out of those? Because those are going to be different budgets and they're going to be different intents. So this, so what that means is on Google, the intent is to search, right? So if you do a pay-per-click, that's a national campaign that you can focus locally, but it's more national, and you're literally competing for keywords. If you use the local service ads in Google, they're supposed to be cheaper, but sometimes they're not. They're concentrated only in certain verticals of business, not all, and those ads come before the PPC on the sponsored ads. If you look on Facebook, the way I describe Facebook to non-techies, it's like a TV commercial basically. You're trying to get in front of a demographic that has a certain age, a certain spend, a certain income level, and you try to get in front of them like you want a TV commercial. They might or may not get the ad, but you're getting exposure. On Instagram, what I found is people are paying for ads thinking that's to go viral, and it's not. It's to get
Right.
a follow so that someone follows you, and then as they see your content, they look at you as an SME, subject matter expert, and then they reach out. So it depends on the intent. So what we try to do with small businesses, matter of fact, I just talked to a construction company. They want to do paid ads. They want to do
Mhm.
Facebook ads. And I told them, let's do Google service ads because you're going to get more benefit from that as opposed to national ads. So it just depends on the customer and what they do. For us, we have found there's so much saturation in the paid ads for digital marketing. It's hard to get traction. People want the one-on-one. They want to know who they can trust because everyone goes to Fiverr, for example, and
Yeah.
has the experience and they want a connection that's face to face. So hopefully I answered your question. I'm not sure if I did or not.
So from what it sounds like, it's right now, like it's hard to get traction with ads, like really within your space. Have you guys tried like paid ads right now? What's been working well in terms of the customer acquisition, like for you guys to land contracts in that sense?
Customer acquisition, we try to stay away from paying ads in general just because they're so cost prohibitive sometimes and the competition wise. We really niche down to email marketing and to one-on-ones with people we meet through a referral basis, either networking or someone says, go do business with these people. That has been our bread and butter, which winds up happening anyways as you scale a business. That becomes more of the thing. However, we do have to do a comprehensive look at that because we're about to start doing some paid ads, as you just mentioned that this week. And what does that look like, and where do you want to do that? So when you come to paid ads for us, right, that becomes a go-to-market strategy. Where do you want to start? Where do you want to expand to? Our idea is start in Austin, expand to Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and then start expanding outwardly. So then that's where you dictate where the spend goes. And then within that spend, you have to dictate what parts of San Antonio, what parts of Austin, what parts you spend your money in to get the
Yeah,
best bang for your buck. So
yeah.
that's more the strategy behind that. So hopefully that answered your question.
For sure. So sometimes what happens as well, even with like personal networking and like referrals as well, is that it's almost hard to scale in that sense, right? How can you actually make it consistent, predictable over and over again, right? Eventually you tap into your entire network and then you have to figure out, okay, where do we go here? How are you exploring some of those ways to create consistency and predictability with like your lead flow, right? In terms of finding potential fits, what are some of those strategies and systems that you're considering to make client acquisition for yourself more reliable?
A lot of that becomes, quite honestly, storytelling nowadays. Matter of
Mhm.
fact, before we were talking, I was looking at our social media because we haven't touched it for a while, and we
Mhm.
just figured out a comprehensive picture for how to do that. And just as a side note, if you're an entrepreneur, there's a bunch of scheduling software that works well for scheduling social media stuff. Google to go by business posts, all that stuff. So you don't have to worry about it daily. You just do it in one day and you knock it out, and it starts to launch and it goes. So that's one of the areas where I think we can have good traction because people trust that a lot. The other thing too is literally email, right?
Mhm.
Just the software that we use scrapes pretty much any vertical we want. And we specifically ask for the Google My Business profile.
Mhm.
Right? So it gives us thousands of leads. So
Mhm.
out of that, if you do an email marketing campaign, you're going to get about a 1% return on that. So you do
Mhm.
the math on that, right? If you do 100,000 people, that's about 100 clients. If you do more, if you do less or more, that's how that goes. Because we do want predictive reoccurring revenue, which is what I wanted to avoid. I wanted to avoid the one-offs when I was a web person to having that kind of consistency, right? Because then we provide for the founders themselves, the families, when we start to hire people, because eventually when we hit 20, 30 clients, we need to hire it, we need to bring stuff back in-house, right? So
Mhm.
we need to hire two salespeople, a designer, maybe two digital marketing people. How do you take care of them and give them a career, not just a job they hate to go to? All those things come after you have a recurring revenue.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, that's what we're doing.
Love that. Yeah, no, absolutely. You're taking care of your people as well in this process. I love that you mentioned that. Now, you mentioned cold calling kind of being one of those ways as well that you're doing a lot of your outreach. On that note, I would love to learn about your approach to sales. What are some of those strategies that have been effective in converting leads that come through into actual like long-term clients, whether that is through some of the internal marketing that you guys are doing currently, referrals, like how are you conducting your sales process and are you doing it on your own solo or do you have a team as well involved in that side of the business?
So it's just my co-founder and I right now, and as we grow, we have a certain benchmark where we want to hire a salesperson. But sales is one of those things. I'm a big believer. There's an old school sales writer. His name is Jeffrey Gittermore. He writes in most of the business journals of the United States. He has a column every month or every week. And his big thing is people hate to be sold, but they love to buy, which is true. And he also is it's not who you know, it's who knows you. So based on those two things, storytelling becomes a thing, right? So cold calling it has to be natural, right? And
Mhm.
by cold calling, I don't mean email outreach, actually pick up the phone and calling, right? What I found is nowadays you have more gatekeepers because nowadays, unless you have a cell phone, it's hard to get up a decision maker to get to see what they need. So you have to win over the actual gatekeeper. And a
Yeah.
lot of times it's just being honest. I use a lot of, his name is Jeremy Miner. His big thing is when you make a cold call, you start with, maybe you can help me, maybe not. That reduces the wall for a lot of gatekeepers and you have a conversation. And then
Mhm.
it's, do they like you or not? Because if they like you, they're going to pass you on to a voicemail or whatever, or even get you in front of the person. If they don't, they're just going to tell you, thank you for your time, and they're going to hang up on you. But I will say this, cold calling is a thing that has a lot of fear involved to it, right? And a lot of people are hesitant to it. And the way I look at that is it's just a phone. Like they're not going to eat you over the phone, right? So just pick up the phone and I know is better than not knowing. That's how I put that, right? So the more no's you get, the more people you get to talk to. And that becomes a good lead generation source.
Mhm.
Did I answer
Yeah.
your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, love Jeremy Miner, love the content that he puts out there as well. We've worked with him in the past too. It was really interesting to see a lot of those frameworks that we saw Zig Ziglar and some of the older guys within the sales space utilize. It's now we have to evolve and shift, right? It's not just the marketing, but it's also in the sales process. Like you need to come off as more aware about some of the problems, potential problems that your prospects face. Now, you mentioned it being like a sunken ship. I would love for you to share kind of your own cold calling. What are you guys trying to do now to optimize that process as you guys start to scale and really launch paid ads as well and launch some other ways to acquire clients and then also convert? What's been working well in your experience, like with adjusting some of the cold calling mechanisms in place?
Cold calling, as far as telephone cold calling, because you have email outreach and text and all that stuff. The actual just cold calling and picking up the phone, that becomes a little bit harder nowadays, but you still have to have part of that as far as part of your marketing funnel, right? You can't just rely on one thing. But again, that also relies on your product. You can't
Mhm.
just tell somebody, watch a YouTube video, learn paid ads, for example, and then jump on the phone. That's not going to work because people are going to ask questions that fall outside of that realm, right? Like most people, I would wager, couldn't have broken down paid ads like I did for you. And it's the same comprehensive way. So now you have an idea of what those verticals are, right? Most people can't do that because they do only one thing. So when you talk to a client or a prospective decision maker that's going to be the gatekeeper to the decision maker, excuse me, they see that, right? They trust that. Oh, this guy's obviously an expert. No one's talked to me about this stuff before. No one's told me, yeah, this is good for you. And sometimes people will have one-on-ones and we're just not a good fit. Their particular business model is not going to be the Google three-pack. So then you do have to go paid ads with them and what that looks like in budgets. But most agencies just niche down to one thing, and that's good. They grow, they scale. I happen to think that's not good for the business or the customer.
Yeah.
Again, I come from the user-centered background, right? User-centered first, customer first, and then everything follows. So that's, and then people really do believe that when they talk to us. So
Yeah.
that helps to get confidence on the cold calling space. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, absolutely. From what it sounds like, the growth's been pretty incredible. If you can share with some of the listeners tuning in, some of them are starting their own marketing agency right now, and they're looking to really find their footing. What are some of the bottlenecks that stand out right now for you as you guys look to unlock that next level? What would it be? Is it attracting like the right leads, improving conversions as well on the sales side? What are you most focused on solving to keep the momentum going with Connexion Creative?
So I think this is kind of a roundabout way to answer your question because I think it's pertinent. I think a lot of people fall in risk aversion, meaning I want to get everything right 100% before I go offer. And that's never going to happen. You have to just launch and then run experiments and learn as you go, but you have to learn. The idea of I'm going to launch a digital agency, go on Fiverr, get someone to do all the work for me, that's not going to be successful for many different reasons. The person you're outsourcing to isn't invested in your business. They just want a paycheck. That's going to, and you can't handle results. And if you don't know and become an expert in these things as you go, you can get hosed by contractors. Like I could tell the contractor that's not right. I know it takes this much time. I know you got to do this. They can't really pull one over me, where a lot of people they can. So I would say make better decisions when you first start marketing. Try to pick something that's try to find a friend who's got a business who will let you run experiments with them, right? Because if you're starting off a digital marketing agency, it's going to be hard to get social proof just by cold calling, just by emailing, right? You're going to have to go somewhere, possibly a networking event, and meet somebody who believes in you and start doing those experiments, right? Because nothing's set in stone in this business, right? Everything's always changing, right? Because whatever is today in Google is going to change tomorrow. So how do you experiment and stay instead of just thinking it's a one-off? Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Now, in terms of what that focus looks like for you within the business internally, what are you focused on solving right now so that you guys can get predictability, more of that consistency as you guys do paid ads and launch some other things internally in terms of the process with marketing? What are some of those focuses as you look to like really grow the runway going into 2025?
Yeah, so right now we're going to launch a campaign nationwide for personal injury attorneys. And this is where, if you remember, I talked about biases at the beginning of our interview. I had a bias being in Austin, right? Because everyone's a techie. I was meeting with an attorney, outside sales rep, by the way, which oddly enough, they're from the Valley in Texas, which is lower by, it's on the border. And they're coming and they're expanding into Central Texas. And her and I were having coffee. And I was like, I don't see, because my impression is attorneys are very smart, because I got a bunch of friends who are attorneys who are very smart. So my impression is they know how to do all these things. And she goes, Miguel, they're just attorneys. Yeah, in Austin for sure, you're probably going to get people that are going to whatever. But people in Bernie, in San Antonio, in Houston, in Dallas, let alone nationally, they may be great attorneys, but don't know anything about digital marketing. Their gatekeeper will open that email. So our idea right now, and the reason I picked personal injury attorneys to start is I have a couple of friends who do that, and they're the ones that said, "Man, this is what the ROI looks like for a personal injury attorney." And what I mean by that in Texas, the personal injury attorney meaning if you slip and fall, if you get in a car wreck or whatever, you hire them, right? So for them, the cheapest or lowest amount they're going to get from a case is 7,000 because normally the limits of liability are 21 grand. So a third goes to the chiropractor, a third goes to the customer, and a third goes to the attorney. But they normally get higher settlements than that. So for them, the ROI on paid ads on digital marketing is astronomical. Like I have a friend of mine who's an attorney. He's spending $21,000 a month on digital ads, right? And he's paying 700 bucks a call. All he needs is to convert five of those calls a month and he's good. And it covers
Yeah.
his whole ad spend, right? So that's a purposeful investment of what we're going to do right now to go national. A lot of agencies, though, they niche down to your services-based businesses, your roofers, and we're doing that too, but there's a better ROI for attorneys. So we know they have money to spend and they need to do that. So hopefully I answered your question about our initiatives, what we're doing.
So you're going after mainly like really outside of the cross vertical approach, niching down, really going after the attorney space essentially, from what it sounds like, right? Because you can get that ROI there, and then and there's also like that lack of SME really within that market. Anyways, I should know this because I'm engaged to an attorney, so.
Yeah.
To start digital marketing, you need to do this, and he has no idea where to begin in that sense. No, that's really innovative. Now, with everything you've accomplished so far and your success, would love to hear again about the vision for the near future. What's top of mind right now for growing Connexing Creative over the next 6 to 12 months?
We wanted to get to a point where we're building the first benchmark is 30 grand a month recurring. And the second benchmark is 100 grand. And based on our models, that's doable. It sounds like a lot, but really it's doable. So when we get to that, what does that look like to scale, right? Because we can't just do it ourselves and outsource it, to your point. We have to start looking at processes, systems, operations. How do you create an office space? Is it totally remote? Is it hybrid? Who do we hire first? Do we have ideas of that? And then depending on who we hire, what do their careers look like? And that's a bunch of other stuff to add to that. You look at benefits and 401ks. And what does that look like for your employees? In my ideal world, we would service everybody who would want to do business with us and help them make better brands for themselves and get an ROI. And at the same time, provide a place where people could grow. And because we're a small company, the intention I know is they'll eventually leave. So how do I put them in a place to be the best they can be so someone else wants to poach them and pay them more and help them along their career? And we become the place where if you're a digital marketer, for example, you know if you go there, you will be so good that eventually in 3 or 4 years, XYZ company will want to hire you. And we just keep a pipeline of talent coming through. And then obviously with salespeople, you have to keep them motivated, give them incentives, not cap their commissions, all that kind of stuff, because you want them to do well too. So how do you provide that space? That's where we have to figure that out. But the first benchmark is 30 grand a month, which is doable for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So from what it sounds like, it's like, how do we actually keep client retention at the end of the day? How do we make sure that we can deliver to where it just isn't, it makes sense naturally for them to like really want to continue with you guys? And then talk to me a little bit more on the sales side, like what you meant by that, really making sure that they're getting fed, they're feeling good about the incentives in place. Like, tell us a little bit more about what you're figuring out there. Are you looking to hire more salespeople? Are you growing your team? Are you adjusting frameworks?
So what I've noticed, especially in the tech space, they treat salespeople bad sometimes, right? And that's just the nature of sales. What I
Mm,
figured out is if you get a salesperson who you keep happy and they see a career growth and they see, I got a lot of friends who do tech sales, and a lot of them complain because their commissions are capped. At a certain point, they don't get any more commission, but they still got to keep on doing their job. As a salesperson myself in the past, I'd be like, I want to keep working here if I know I can't make any more money. And then at that point, what happens if they leave? Do they take clients with them? Do they keep, because in tech, people don't know this, but in Texas, a non-compete isn't really a legal document because the way
mm,
the state looks at it is we can't keep you from working. So a lot
mm.
of salespeople that sign one in Texas, if they sign one while they're in Texas, but it's somewhere else, it's a different thing. But if they sign one in Texas, then it's very easy for them to tear it up, their non-compete, and just take their clients with them. I know many people who've done that who've been very successful. So you want to avoid that, right? So how do you do that? You allow them a place to grow, a place where they could ask questions, where they could learn, where they could apply. Because I'm a big believer in scripts, but I'm also a believer a script is too mechanical. You have to memorize the script and then let it come from you naturally,
Yeah.
which means you might deviate. So how do you help those salespeople, how their personalities come through? Because I do believe there's a thing to just doing the job and learning and growing instead of trying to perfect it, if that makes sense. You eventually perfect it by doing that, but you have to do the going and doing first. So I believe sales is one of the most important parts in companies, and so is marketing, by the way. And it's a sad thing that they get cut first when there's budget cuts. Because if
Mm.
nothing is sold, then how are you going to provide for a business?
Yeah.
That's the bloodline of any major company. I don't care how big it is. If no one sells anything, nothing comes in to fund anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely. And it's one of the biggest, the marketing and the sales arm. After you productize your offer and you have something really good in place that is uniquely disruptive, how do you really make sure those two components within your business, your machine, actually operate to their highest potential, essentially? Now, I want to get a bit hypothetical here because I love your passion for UX innovation. What's like your thought process if you had a genie in the room, Miguel, and you rub the lamp? And now you have all these unlimited resources. I like to always ask every guest who hops on, what would you implement immediately to accelerate the business's growth today?
Immediately, I would ask the genie for $500,000 to hire two salespeople to go and just sell. Because I
Mm,
know our processes work. I know we have a good product. And I know two really good salespeople could accelerate that.
mm.
Then
Okay.
that's your question.
Yeah. I don't think it would cost you a 500,000, to be honest. But
But
yeah, absolutely. No, finding good talent in place from what it sounds like, really. The best of the best to really help in that process, have those conversations and allow you to like focus on more of the CEO level activities as you look to scale. So, one more question on this front and we'll wrap up. I want to get into the lightning round. Really, how do you see the UX design and healthcare, really the tech industry kind of evolving in the coming years, especially with your focus on more like user-centered solutions, focusing in on really all components of the business from like branding, messaging, okay, how do we also create like a lead machine? How is Conexion Creative positioning itself for that type of future?
so when you look at user experience, it had a revival about 5 years ago, and now it's going down the tail end. And because there's a confusion on what that really means. A lot of people think user experience means a graphic designer is going to come in and do their magic and make something look really pretty that's going to get results. That's the opposite of user experience. We start with research, user centeredness, and then try to figure out what problem spaces a user has, and then the easiest ones to come and commercialize. And then once you do that and you go into the wireframe, to what we call wireframing, that's a whole nother type of research interview process to get that done. So in any kind of space, I believe, not just the healthcare space, as you use AI, as we get more niche down, a good designer is going to have to leverage those things to be able to make some decision-making processes. So one of my big beefs with outsourcing UX to not your company is that you lose that critical thinking piece. People just execute. And when you execute, you make really crappy products because you try to force something on a user, and that day's gone. The iPhone changed all that. When the iPhone came out, you can no longer just force someone to use something. Now it's a more personal, intimate thing, right? Whether it's healthcare, whether it's law, whether it's HR, those are all personal things. How are you user centered in that process? So a good UX designer will leverage AI to look at user journeys, look at research, whether it's looking at demographic research, whether it's trying to get an AI bot to go synthesize user interviews to find overarching themes and problems, to maybe even doing, if they're doing a product they sell that's a digital product, what those wireframes look like initially to go A/B test That's
Yeah.
where I see UX evolving to, right? I
Mhm.
don't think you're going to have big ecosystems anymore. You're going to have a smaller group of designers, but they know how to leverage AI and even possibly code someone, so they can give out, so they can hand off stuff that's coded already to developers. Because then they're in two, right? They're going to shrink two. You won't need five developers. You need one or two who could use AI to get code snippets, put them into their processes, modify the code and make stuff work, right? So that's where I see UX going for innovation. And it also becomes one of those cost saving things too, right? Why would you want to pay 20 designers when you can pay five that know how to use AI in the best possible way? Anyways, hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to be that recurring topic is like, how do we actually use generative AI to improve operational efficiency? Not necessarily with like actually creating a product or like an end result, but okay, how do we help? How do we essentially leverage that with the talent we bring in? Like, how do we enable them to really like think a little bit about the right questions and asking those questions as well to generate those responses, right? So that you can get more of that refinement in essence. Yeah, no, I mean, I love that. Like, really, just from what it sounds like, you have all the right thinking, thought processes in place. You have some good systems. You guys are starting some paid ads. Really excited to see where the future takes you guys next to that 30K goal and then eventually 100K, Miguel. We'll be following your journey along as you guys head into 2025. On that note, that wraps up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. Miguel, thank you so much once again for joining us and sharing your remarkable journey with us today and really creating a lot more user-friendly experiences as you work with some of these SMBs and hopefully enlighten more lawyers out there to use digital marketing. I'm excited to see this journey as you guys head into this year. To our listeners, if you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you would like to get in touch with Miguel and work with him, especially if you are a attorney, feel free to hit him up on LinkedIn. We will link his profile below in the summary. And you can also find some more resources and insights at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their growth through trained appointment setters and world-class sales systems. Until then, keep climbing. We'll see you guys all on the next one.